Hey guys, welcome to episode 21 of the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Beddoes, and this is a podcast for all people aspiring to get into the game industry. We sit down and talk to some of these great people who've been working in games at the moment, have a long form conversation, and hopefully learn a thing or two. This week, got a very special guest. We've got Dekogon Take 2. We've got the art director from Dekogon, Taylor Brandenburger. How are we doing, bro?
Doing good, man. Just been building furniture a lot this past day, so my hands are like numb.
Oh, of course, you've just moved, haven't you?
Yeah.
Where is it
the
from?
Austin area. Yeah, Austin.
Awesome shit.
The good old, yeah, man. The Yeehaw State. Bunch of cowboys. Yeah.
Dude, I hope the move hasn't been too hectic for you. This is you're living alone now, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm a big boy now, man.
Welcome to adulthood, dude.
Cool.
It sucks.
Thanks.
Trust me, it sucks.
Yeah,
So-
it's gonna take some too, but you know.
It's
Next step.
I can't wait for the complaints when it's oh god, I have no money, I'm living alone. Oh my god, it sucks. Like you're past the like good points. It's all like uphill from here.
Yeah, you know, that's the only thing I'll miss is having my mom around to like make dinners and do laundry. Yeah, I know. Gotta do all that stuff now this time. So, but yeah, it's the next step in life, man. So
I look forward to hearing you
Wrap up.
complain over the coming months. It's gonna be
you'll
fun.
hear it. You'll hear it.
So, yeah, Dekogon. You've been with Dekogon since day one, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Since like because it started in October.
Mhm.
It started in October, and then he did a run of who he could find, and then he found me because I actually had an epiphany where I was in a transitionary state where I needed to get a job. So I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a portfolio piece, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get a job from it. And then I did that, and I guess Clinton might have seen it on ArtStation, and then he reached out to me asking if I was interested in doing the collabs thing with him.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was in December, so not the original, but like 2 months off, but
Yeah.
basically day one,
So you did the collab stuff. This is before like any of the contract stuff started. So how do you get from doing like collab stuff, which is like these one-off props and projects? How does it go from there into being an art director? 'Cause it's a big jump there.
People always ask me how you transition from something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that it's something you're given, like those leadership qualities. Like if you track back to far enough to when like I was a kid, I was always the one making games or like making up playground games and giving
Yeah.
rules to playground games. So like if you track it back, I had that bossiness factor to me where I was like very demanding in regards to like how things work and how things should run. But in terms of collab went from managing tons of people at one point 100, and it is now dwindled down to core artists that can carry their own weight and whatnot. So it went back from 100 artists to now a more sizable team, and obviously with that, it's a lot easier to maintain the quality and whatnot through those smaller teams. But even then, the smaller teams, they're pretty big sizes. Like each contract we have is around maybe 12 artists. So I mean, it's still a big size. It's like not as big as collab, which is a lot easier on me because less people to point
Manage.
fingers around and do this. Yeah, so and that's the reason why we're getting a lot of management guys as of recently, because we can start balancing all that stuff out. So
Yeah, because currently you've got so there's yourself as an art director. You've got Michael Kinsley as he's the art lead,
Yes.
and you brought on 2 new people, sort of like trainee art directors, correct?
Yep.
So
Yeah, just trying to find the balance because beforehand it was just Clinton and I doing a lot of the managerial work, and I was leading maybe 5 to 6 projects. So we kind of had to say, okay, we need to, because at that point I was just doing management work. I wasn't really doing any art. I was just pointing fingers and doing things and telling people where to go and how to do it. But now we're starting to really flesh out our internal system, and this way we can get back to what art leading is, and that is, you know, supervising a group, getting them in the right direction, but also doing art, and that's something I'm really happy that Clinton and I were able to do, because now it's a lot better of a system, and
Mhm.
we got to bring on a couple of awesome guys that have very high potential in being really good leaders in the industry.
It's interesting, actually. You know what? You when you mentioned that you've always had that innate leadership quality to you, I was talking to a guy in of a Discord, a guy who does the YouTube channel, Lucas. Literally discussing, not arguing, discussing. It was a heated debate, I suppose, sometimes. But we were talking about leadership and
Yeah.
what it is. Now, I'll make my stance on it pretty clear. Not everyone's a leader, and I don't like the idea of pursuing leadership. I was just speaking to somebody about this. I don't like the idea of pursuing leadership. Now, I assume, judging by what I've observed from the team so far, you worked really hard as a collab artist. Did you approach Clinton about the art director role, or was it something like, dude, I need you to pick up some more slack for me, you've been doing good? How did that come about? Because it's either gonna make my point completely invalid, or it's gonna prove a point. I'm not sure.
So basically, how like me and Clinton's relationship started, it was a regular collab artist, and then he saw that I was able to pick up a lot of the remaining assets that no one wanted to do. So it first started off as like a, hey, can you do water jug? Hey, can you do this? I need a shovel. Can you make a shovel real quick? Because at the time we didn't have, no one really wanted to do all the small props. So we needed those small props to be in those packs, so we can kind of have a really nice, well-rounded pack. So it first started off as like, hey, he used to just come to me and say, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And then after that, me and him started talking more and more. And then one day I asked him, I said, hey, if you ever need any help managerial wise, like, and because at the time he was still working at the coalition, so he was doing that full time, and then he was coming home and doing collab. I said, if you need anything, just let me know. And then he's like, and then yeah, he just said, yeah, I'll take you up on that. So and then we started working on that. I started doing a lot of managerial stuff, but it was small stuff. It wasn't anything what I'm doing now. It was just screenshots for independent assets that we were selling on markets. And then through that, we just became buddies. We just talked every day, discussed, what we should do. And then through there, we started talking more and more about, what where Dekogon could be, what should be, and how we want to get there. And then through that, Clinton kept seeing the business side of me, and he kept seeing that, I'm not like a one and done. I want to go all the way. So through that, we experimented a lot with that, and then we got our first contract, and then which was Hivemine, and then I did that because at the time I was just his go-to guy for everything. So I just did the first Dekogon contract sprint for those guys, and then through that, we started to get more and more guys. We started to get other projects that haven't been announced yet, and then Scavengers came along, and next thing you know, I wasn't really declared as a lead. I was declared a lead once. I was like same with when I got transitioned to the art director role. It was more of it wasn't something I asked for. It wasn't something. It just kind of was like, okay, who's Taylor's in line. Taylor's obviously can do that. He has more experience, so he's going to help direct those guys because he already knows what's up. Yeah. So it started off like that, and then but because he knew I already had those leadership qualities, maybe that's something I didn't know about yet. But I think he saw them in me, and then so he kind of like threw me in the water and said, okay, do what you have to do and make sure there's like a maintained quality across the sprint. And then from there, it just kept growing and growing, and Dekogon kept just having the snowball effect where we just kept getting more artists, really talented artists, and a lot more contracts. And then next thing you know, I'm leading a bunch of guys, and now I'm the official like art lead. And then I started managing so many projects now that I'm starting to become just the art director now. So like it was never. I don't think if you were to ask Clinton or myself,
it didn't just happen.
It didn't just happen. Yeah, it kind of built we built the relationship, and then we're like, okay, if I look at what I do, and like I maintain quality, I manage art and how the art pipeline works.
Mm-hmm.
That description sounds like an art director, so there I'm an art director, just like that. So
It
it's
makes
like,
sense.
it
Makes
wasn't,
sense.
yeah, it wasn't really something planned. It was something that like went with the wind.
So you spoke about maintaining quality and stuff like that. Now, I'm guessing at this point, like Dekogon is a household name within the games industry. You I'm guessing you get quite a lot of emails, either yourself or Clinton, from people wanting to come in. How difficult is, because it's one thing with studio. Okay, this is how I perceive it. I see like studio work. People sort of, they know it's cutthroat, and they won't apply until they absolutely know they're ready. Yeah. I get the impression with freelancers, people sort of throw these emails out like, yeah, I'll just go do freelancing and I'll just go work for these. Do you get a lot of that as Dekogon? Like, because you're a big name, but I imagine you get quite a lot of what's the word? Inexperienced people. If it's the most polite way of saying it. How do you even feel with that? Like, what's the grounds to get, like, where do you put the benchmark? And how do you judge people to be like, because there's a big difference between a contract artist and a studio artist. It's a massive difference. So where's the marker? Where's the, how do you judge it?
Again, it's just all in the portfolio. We get a lot of guys that, they can't get the studio job, so they think they can get the freelancing job, and it's not like that. If you can't get a studio job, chances are you won't get a freelancing job. The only difference between them is, one you're working on site and one you're working remote. But I mean, at least with Dekogon, we hold artists to the same standards as if they were going to come into the office the next day. So, we look at their portfolio, and if they're not qualified, or if I don't think they're qualified, then, Clinton and I and all the other art leads, we're very transparent in if we think something is good for the artist. And then we also take into consideration that, we've actually hired a lot of guys where we didn't think they would be as impactful as they are now. And that's what's super nice, is that even though with the contractors, if we do see a spot of, this guy has really nice potential, then we give them a shot. We don't just shut them down. But if we do think that, because I've had times where I've had to turn artists down because they could do it, but I know that the stress that I would cause by having requirements, deadlines, and standards, their hair would just fall out. So, I try to look out for the artists, but I'm always transparent in terms of why we're not going to hire them. I always respond with feedback, why I think they didn't get the job, and what do I recommend. I always do that. And so they're never left in, like, I know with studios, or at least hiring for studios, you'll send something and you'll never hear anything, and then you kind of have like it's them, not me. And I always try to help artists out in terms of that. But that's probably what I would say regarding the whole. We do get a lot of inexperienced freelancers, but you just gotta be. No one wants to put anybody down, but you do have to be real with people.
No, that's the thing. I think is it's weird. What sort of, like, do you think about, like, what traits the artist needs? Like, because, so for me, for example, I do both studio work and freelance work.
Yeah.
I see it as freelance work is far more difficult, for one, because I'm not sat in a room with you and you can't sit there and go, Alex, this is wrong. Can you fix this? This is wrong for this reason. You have to type it most of the time. And when you're trying to communicate ideas that way, it's pretty much, it's near impossible. Yeah. So there's obviously the communication barrier. You have to have, like, a special type of person to be able to, like, negotiate feedback without getting offended easily, because obviously when you type stuff, it's easy to misinterpret stuff. What other traits are there, like, between, because there are big differences between studio work and freelance work. What sort of, like, what skills do you look out for in a freelance artist compared to a studio artist? Is there a difference? I might be wrong.
I think the biggest thing is, especially when you're doing, like, remote gigs with teams like Dekogon's doing, is that transparency is everything. So, like, always posting. I've had a lot of situations where people send me feedback through direct messages. I'm like, no, post it in the Discord. along so every artist can see and every artist can give their opinion and give their feedback. And you know, like I see a lot of freelancers trying to still hide from that social side of
Why is that
the
important
of
as
the,
well? Because why do you think that's important to not hide from the social side?
um part of it's just it's just good for everybody. It's good to see, you know, for the lead. It's good for the leads because they get to see that you're actively working. Because there have been times where someone's just completely went off the grid, and then they come back with a final product. We're like, well, no, we didn't approve of any of this, and we need to
Yeah,
know if you're working. Because if you're not working, then we need to give this to somebody else because we have deadlines. So like transparency and with in terms of that, it's like crucial because you know it's super. You need to know if someone's actually working on something.
mm-hmm.
And then regarding the whole posting feedback and always posting work in progresses throughout like the Discord group or whatnot, it's just beneficial to see how something can develop over time. And I think it's super important to let the newer artists see that transition because even though I, as an art lead and art director, I say, okay, I know this is good or I know this is bad, and I think I know what's wrong with it, but I'll always, once in a while, I'll post my renders in the Discord to see what the new guys say about it because I want to see because I'm trying to train their artistic eye in terms of,
Yeah,
I know what's wrong with it, but I want to see what they say, what's wrong with it, to see if I can kind of transform that eye. It's also great for the artists because they get to see that, you know, say Dward does something good, and then I say, okay, Dward, let's do this, that, this, and then he comes back an hour later and changes all that, and it looks fucking awesome. Now
mm-hmm.
all the artists are like, wow, even Dward can like really just revamp something completely and make it look awesome. You know, it kind of shines the light on that nobody's perfect, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that's really hard to do remote. But that's something that we try as management try to enforce.
Well, I think
So
it's
it's nothing
important
to
because
discourage. So
it's you know what, I think that's important though. I think anyone who's listening is new. I like seriously listen to that bit about being transparent and showing your work in progresses, because I have to admit, like, I can understand why a younger artist or someone less experienced, they're just like, oh, I don't want to bother the lead, I don't want to disturb them, I'll just carry my work. And I can understand that mentality,
yeah,
but the fact of the matter is, there are, like, especially in freelance, there's some really fucking harsh deadlines. So that
yeah,
means they need to know, one, you're constantly working, and two, the last thing you could do in freelance is waste time. You haven't got that luxury. So if, like you said, if you post some work without feedback to the lead, and the lead's like, well, that's not what we quite need,
yeah.
that's a lot of wasted
everyone's
time.
toes.
But the
Yeah,
thing is, it doesn't come from, the thing I think like young guys need to listen to with that is, it doesn't come from like, we want like to tell you off or anything like that. It's because we can't afford to waste time. And I get that the young writers are probably doing it from a point of view of, I'm trying to help the lead by not bothering them. You're not. Just drill down to it. You are not helping by being like quiet. It doesn't help anybody. And I know that's intimidating for some characters, but you're hearing it now from an art director. Don't be fucking quiet. It really makes it difficult. What
100%.
What other things then, like, because that's a great bit of knowledge or like information for somebody. What other like pitfalls are there when you're doing freelance? Not necessarily as an artist in general, but when you're working on a freelance project, what other pitfalls are there? Because that kind of information there, just that don't be quiet, be transparent, all this sort of stuff, that's golden. Yeah. So what other stuff is there like that?
And trying to find because I know for scavengers it's a very specific style, so having I guess that's another thing that's kind of hard to do when you're remote studios, to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of art style. Mm-hmm. So, and that kind of correlates back to the same point, is that if you're be quiet, I think everything winds back to, especially when you're remote, everything winds back to just communication, because especially with like certain art styles, like, when you're doing the mobile game, imagine that mobile project for us. Imagine if you didn't have anything regarding the art style, or maybe what if you never posted any feedback for Michael, and everyone came together at the end and everyone's styles are differently. So it's trying to find the balance between communication and also making sure you can achieve the art style, because everyone's makes different art in different parts. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you mentioned something there, so I'm curious. I don't actually know the answer to this. So, Dekogon's great. It's a international now outsourcing studio. You work for companies all over the world, which is seriously cool. You do both serious games, indie games, AAA games, mobile games.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of this is new, and it's what I'm curious about is, are artists transferable between them? So, in your experience working with artists, have you been able to take them and go, right, you're working on a serious games project at the moment? I don't know what that might be. That might be VR. That might be whatever.
Hmm.
Do they transfer from that over into mobile work pipeline, over into AAA pipeline? Like, are they transferable, or have you found you've had to bring people in to fill these gaps?
For the most part, uh, the, the talent that we have regarding just the artists, they're very flexible. At the end of the day, it's all art, and it's all about how close you can get an art piece to where you want to be. Like there, I don't think Michael has ever um, done a mobile game. He's never done a mobile game yet. He's over here making an entire level for a client in Unity, and he just picks it up all on the spot. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it has to do with going out of the comfort zone, because there's a lot of artists that don't want to do that. There's a lot of artists um, that are strictly weapons, strictly whatever their specialty is. So I haven't had a problem with artists, um, say one's coming from scavengers, now they're going to VR. Now they have super high optimization they have to hold,
Mm-hmm.
or now instead of jumping from a AAA title that we're doing, now they have to go to a mobile game or a stylized game that we now have to change up the pipeline.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any issues with the artists. I think you can't really be picky with remote, because there's this, like you said, you work with everything. Like we have mobile projects, we have VR projects, we have AAA, we have, you know, there's a bunch of stuff. You can't really be picky when it comes to freelancing, because if you do, then you might not have work for
Well,
like
I think that's.
like
Do
a
you think
month or
that's the
two.
difference between like a good artist and a great artist is how quickly they can pick up new skills, how versatile they are.
Yeah,
The reason I bring it up is I'm just thinking of like Clinton's portfolio, and you look how varied that is, and
yeah,
he's one of the best, and that's what I do pretty like when it's one thing to see, so like you mentioned like weapons artists, and Duard's a great example for this. Like Duard Mazar, he's a weapons artist. He had some of my favorite weapons on our station, but
yeah.
he also does kick-ass environment stuff. Now the
I
bit that's
know, right? Who would have
impressive,
thought?
but the bit
Yeah, I
that's
know. You look at his
impressive,
portfolio, and it's like, what? Where
but
did this guy come from? Now he's doing mobile, and he's just
exactly, but
that's crazy.
there's extra level to it.
Yeah,
'Cause I find that like when I see someone who's like purely weapons or like purely props or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter what the medium is. I see when I see someone do something completely different, it's almost like more impressive because it's like both disciplines to a very high level. You don't know one to a high level, you know two or three or however many, and it's. I feel like with
it's
Dekogon,
awesome.
but with Dekogon, this is something I find interesting. I feel like, and I suppose it's unfair. It might not be just Dekogon. It might be freelance companies in general, but they breed that sort of versatility into their artists because you have to be. Like you said, if you don't, you lose work. Um, have you ever? I know you said you haven't had many issues with it, but do you think that's something you'd think about? Like, do you think about that going forward when you hire an artist? Do you go, this guy's doing 50 different things. He's more valuable than the guy who only has, say, for example, weapons. Do you view it like that, or are you like, nah, he knows weapons, so therefore he obviously understands how to model and texture, so he could do props too? Or do you see
Yeah.
the versatile guys and go, nah, I want the versatile person?
The versatile guys are just a plus. I've been saying it for I think 2 years now, but generalists are. I genuinely think they're on the come up, especially with indie. You got. It's just because the thing, the beef with generalists is that they're not good at one thing. They're good at just one. They're just okay at everything, but they're not good at one thing. But people like Dward and Michael and all these other guys, they just completely devalue that, and it just adds so much more value to those types of people. So if I notice that, a guy or a girl is like their portfolio is just like kick ass and it's very specific to one thing, it's like, yeah, sure, okay, it's good to know that if you ever have a weapons contract, then they're my go-to person. But I do recognize if someone's versatile in like multiple things, mobile, VR, stylized.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, I think even if they don't, because Duard's never done mobile, but we kind of ease him into the style because he already expressed an interest in something like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, we always give the artist like a chance to see if they would like it. And we don't put any pressure on artists to go on projects they don't want to. It's always at the artist's decision.
Mm-hmm.
But giving the artist that confidence, like, if you want, you can do this. But I think you would do a great job because I've seen how your pipeline is, and I see how it functions. You got a good head on your shoulders. I 100% believe in you. And installing that as a higher role in Dekogon, installing that into the younger artists is like super awesome because you're giving those artists the confidence, because that's what it all winds down to. I mean, you can be uncomfortable all you want. It's whether you're confident enough to do something. Because like I've been doing a lot of these things where it's like completely on my realm. If you look at my portfolio, you'd be like, you've been doing that. It's like
Mm.
you just kind of have to throw yourself in the water with that stuff. But no, I don't look for versatile artists. I think when they come around, I do acknowledge them though.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's not something I would recommend to do as a new artist. I would follow the path of perfect prop art, perfect the pipeline, then move on to environment, and then kind of get into different areas. But if you're trying to get a job, I'd stay on the straight road. I wouldn't go too off the tracks.
And say,
Um,
what actually jumps out at you is like when you're looking at portfolios. I spoke a little bit to Chris Redsby about this. I hope I butchered his name last time I said it, so I got it right this time, so no one
I
can
saw
moan at
that
me.
tweet.
Dude, I never felt so bad. But we spoke about what actually jumps out to you in environments. So like some artists, it's like, oh, when I see that technical execution, it's just, yeah, it's on point. Or some artists are like, when it's just the composition's just right or the lighting's just right. Like you as an artist, ignore the fact that you're a director for a second for Dekogon.
Yeah.
You see portfolios, and this is going to be advice for people who's building portfolios. Like, what actually leaps out at you? What grabs your attention? What type of things?
I definitely the textures for me. It's just like there's this one quote. This one guy said, I don't know who it was, but you can make a bad model. You can make a bad model textures look good. Textures can save a bad model, but bad textures can't save a good model.
Mm.
So that's my take on it. And regarding in environments, I'd say just something that's well thought out layout wise, and lighting is obviously crucial. But just something different, something that's like I've never seen before. I think like Jay Cummings is an awesome example of his portfolio piece on the scene. I mean, just scrolling through ArtStation, I just saw it immediately. So I mean, just something that can catch the eye. But when it comes to me, it's if I'm looking at like strictly props, I'm looking at the textures, and the bakes. I'm looking for any baked detail, low poly errors, like bad shading. But for the most part, props for environment, I'm looking for just that uniqueness and that artist's touch, his style and whatnot.
Just a small tangent. I hope Jay don't mind me doing this, and a lot of the guys in the chat I know of Jay's Slaughterhouse scene. Looking at it objectively, what about it that you said that jumped out at you, and I know it jumped out at a lot of people. It's one of my favourite scenes I've seen recently by anybody. Looking at it objectively as a director, what jumped out? What about that scene? What was so good about it that really grabbed you? Because I think again, this is something where people listening in, they could just be like, you say whatever it is, and it's like, okay, I can learn from that. So, what about that scene? What grabbed you?
I feel like the mood for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It instantly when I saw those, saw the renders, I immediately, if you can sense something with your five senses just by looking at an image, I think you did an amazing job.
Oh, that's interesting.
So just like you can feel this, you can just smell the musk and the gore. You can, if you were to feel something, like feel one of the metals, you can feel like the graininess in the metal and like the rust patches. But if that's usually what I do when it comes to like a lot of the Dekogon scenes. If I can imagine all five of my senses just by looking at the image, you did a hell of a job. And I think that was definitely the big thing. It was him portraying the mood and the overall feel that it is actually a real place. This is someone's home, and the lighting was something that really influenced that for sure.
It's really good you said that, I think, because whenever I see people say you nailed the mood, I think that's the best I've heard it articulated. The fact that you get to feel it with your five senses. That's I've never heard someone say that, and that's very interesting. I've never thought it's interesting to say. I think it's sort of like it's weird. It's like when I spoke to Ryan about this. It's like I already knew that. Yeah, you just put it to words, and that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, that's the mood. That's why I get it. I get what you mean. So I think that's really interesting.
That's something I suggest even for props. I think like Clinton's hammer maybe I think it was a hammer. It was a modified hammer he did for one of the post-apocalyptic weapons, and man, like all five senses, you can smell the rust from the nails and all the wood, the rotting wood. You can feel it. You can like if you were to bang it along a wall, you know exactly how it would sound and how it would cling. Like just like very specific things like that go a long way, and that's something I wish more props artists would do, because I think a lot of people look at it just visually. They don't think about if I were to brush my hand along this surface, how would it feel? How would it like clamp onto my hand, and how would the oils look after I leave that mark? I think a lot of people get stuck in the whole, does it look good? Does it look good? But I think a lot of it's like losing the those five senses. So I think that's probably the best advice I could tell anybody right there. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. And it's just interesting. You mentioned the textures. Let's talk from a presentation point of view. Now, as someone who obviously has to look through a lot of portfolios, you spend a lot of your time doing that because you're obviously sifting through the applicants for Dekogon. I've had this conversation a million times with different artists, and I've heard a different answer every time. Where do you stand when you see like so you got your presentation piece? Say for example, we use the hammer as an example. Say you make the hammer, and you do like 6 renders for it. Where do you stand when you see then the sort of supporting shots? So the shots like just the ambient occlusion, the wireframe, the flat textures. When people post, they show like the bakes or the UVs or anything, or topology. Do you, when you're looking at work, do you actually care or look at that, or are you like, well, all of that's irrelevant, does the model work? Like, how do you view them sort of stuff? Because I hear people say they're a waste of time, all they do is like show up errors, or I hear people say no, because it helps me understand the model and understands how it's made, and I'm like, okay, I hear arguments from both sides, and I can see arguments from both sides, so I'm just curious, where do you stand on that?
I personally like seeing the tech side of stuff like that, because especially on portfolio pieces, I could see if any flaws in the pipeline. I think that's the best time to see if they are actually good at, because I guess in the end it doesn't really matter, because it's about what the gamer sees. The wires obviously don't matter, but I think I'd rather hire somebody that knows how to do something right the first time than have to keep fixing something and keep doing it wrong. If that does, I recommend everybody on every portfolio piece to show the technical side of it. It just helps the studio or the gig to really see that you do know how everything works, and it doesn't just look like but you understand how shading works and how everything works. You're not like misleading anybody. You're not like false advertising that this model looks great, but the tech side of it's like completely wrong. The guy doesn't actually know how to do. He just got lucky on this bake, and
but you wouldn't disregard that, would you? You wouldn't. You wouldn't disregard so with that, I get, okay, that's a good point. Would you second guess someone, like say for example, let's talk about the exact same prop, the hammer. If they didn't have any of that, would you in the back of your head go, well, I mean, do you even question it, is what I mean? Do you in your head go, so you'd look at that, if someone posted only beauty shots, you would go, okay, it's good, but what about the wireframe? Is the wireframe good? You'd actually question that. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. You're the first person to say that, so I find that interesting. Because most people
how can you not?
Well, a lot of people say is, It's true. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's just curious because like most people are like, oh, all they do is show the errors when they're out. They don't show the errors. They draw criticism that wouldn't normally be there. But they say also normally they wouldn't even think about the topology at that point. But
yeah,
it's interesting you said that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
It's still there. Again, like I'd rather know someone knows. I like knowing that someone's pipeline is flawless than have to like load up something because there's bad normal errors that I've noticed in the engine. I like to know that the artists are polished.
Would you put the
I know
caveat
in the end it
though?
doesn't matter.
But what about so that for someone who say for example is new to the industry, that's fair enough. Just out of curiosity, if you saw someone with like I'm trying to think of a reasonable example, 3 years at a AAA studio, would you still ask that question?
I would hope they would know their pipeline in and out, and
No, but would
the
you say the
reasons
same
why.
thing? Would you say if they posted a prop, say for example they've had 3 years at studio, and they applied to you, and the most recent prop they don't have
No,
the support?
I probably wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
I probably
Okay.
wouldn't.
That's fair
I would
enough.
hope that they know
Yeah.
that they're doing it the right way. But yeah, I think it's definitely more of a it's good for the newer artists. It's essential for the newer artists because a lot of those mistakes are found in the newer artists. So it would make sense for why you look for it in the newer artists and not like Jeremy.
You watch one of his Blender streams. You wait till you watch that after this. Oh yeah, guys, yeah, we'll be raiding that after this. But dude, watch one of them then say that. So I just want to move on to one thing which I'm curious about, and I'm not sure how much you can talk about. So feel free to shut this conversation down when you need to. You, Michael, Clinton, are super fucking busy. You're obviously running the company. Clinton's also doing Midwinter. You're managing projects, and Michael's managing projects. How do you go about sourcing new projects? Because you're constantly busy. You're constantly got contracts coming in. Do you go like? Do one of you guys go out and find them? Is it purely from people approaching you? Like how do they come about?
So most of it's done through because since we had such a big, we had a bunch of packs on the Unreal Asset Store, so that alone just has so many. It's good ad space right there, but for the most part, just Clinton goes around and asks people if they ever need a hand or if they need a gig, or sometimes studios reach out to us. But for the most part, we're getting to a point to where now that we are focusing on, contract stuff, that we are now kind of pushing ourselves out there. Whereas before, those contracts came to us. But now since we want to start focusing on the contracts, now we're putting our neck out there. So yeah, that's all Clinton. Clinton does Midwinter stuff, and then he on the side he does deals and whatnot
on the side.
Once the deal,
yeah, it's a full-time job in itself.
After stuff, yeah. he's crazy, man. He's crazy for sure.
That's one word.
But yeah, but yeah, so he does all the deal stuff and he makes sure everything's good and all the contract stuff, and then once it's approved, that's when I take over everything, and then I hand over things to Michael, and we kind of distribute, everything from there as you've seen.
So essentially, you guys, if I'm understanding right, Clinton's obviously handling Midwinter. He sources the contracts and he has them initial engagements with the clients, but then yourself and Michael run the projects. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
And every once in a while, Clinton will ask us if we need help. Like it's like for shader stuff. He usually step in and do some shader stuff real quick if he has the time. But for the most part, me and Michael try to not get him to do too many things because he's already so busy. So if we ever have any art stuff, I usually go to Michael and Michael comes to me. So we're pretty good at trying to keep the heat off Clinton because he's already got a lot he's doing. So
yeah, he's like I said this in the Dynasty chat today. I was like, my bar for my idea of busy goes up and up and up, like, because the more people I'm interacting with and meeting,
Always,
I'm like,
yeah.
because I used to think I was busy. I used to be like, yeah, I'm a pretty busy guy. Then, like, I met Jeremy, and I've spoke to Clinton, I spoke to you guys, and spoke to some people on Monday, and I'm like, oh shit, my whole perception of what busy means is completely skewed. Because, like, you guys are machines at times. I don't get it.
There's
but-
always someone who's busier, man.
That's what I mean. I'm like, well, how? I feel like I have no time. So how have you guys got, like, time? I don't understand. This is bullshit.
Yeah, it is some bullshit.
Okay, let's talk about one side of freelance art in general, which I don't think is spoken about much. And again, if this is either shaky ground or, like, comfortable, blah blah blah, just feel free to say. How do you deal with artists when they either don't receive criticism well, or you're on a project and it ain't, how do you go about correcting behaviour? Is it difficult with freelance? Like, is it literally like, with freelance, I know it can be cutthroat. Previous companies I've worked with for freelance, it's pretty cutthroat. It's almost, I don't want to call it one strike and you're out, but it can be like that sometimes. So how do you deal with that side of stuff? Because I'm guessing that also comes down on you as the art director to sort of handle.
Yeah. But for the most part, if I notice, like, I always try to correct the artist if I notice something that they're doing wrong or that they're missing. All I do is write art bibles for most of the projects, so just making sure the quality is there and the technical requirements are there. But if they're not, over time I'll definitely make note of it. I'll reach out to them. Transparency is the same way with management. We always tell if we have a problem with artists, then we go directly to the artist. So yeah, we usually give them a couple, like, hey, heads up, do this, do that.
I mean, do you run into that often? Do you actually run into this often? You do? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
a lot more than we should have. Part of it's just, I make the art bibles, everything, all the information's there. It's just, no one reads the art bible for the most part.
Describe that. What, just so everyone knows, describe what, just a quick summary, what do you contain in the art bible? Go.
Art bible is just art direction, how to make sure that what you're making coincides with the other props that everyone else is making. Technical sides, like making sure the asset has really nice silhouettes and nothing, no bad facing. Just like a lot of the things that either the client wants to maintain or something that Dekogon wants to maintain as well. So, like, art bible goes all the way down to package delivery. So it can be just a bible in general. It's not necessarily just art. Just to make sure management's life's easier, because if you don't coincide with the art bible, then it just makes a longer day for the management team, because now they have to fix it, because if they don't fix it, then the client's going to be a little cranky about the package delivery or the quality. So yeah, we'll usually fix the errors, but then we'll say, hey, heads up, try not to keep doing this, it's a bad habit.
What type of habits are they? So you say don't do this, like bad habits. What are some of the telltale signs? And the only reason I'm asking again, I'm not like you say like a gossip figure like that. It's, I want people to understand what are the little pitfalls, because again, the artists probably don't do it intentionally. That's the first thing. So what are some of the little things you have to correct?
It's very little things, like scales off, collisions off, collisions doesn't make sense. Too many uses of, like, collision meshes, naming conventions, believe it or not, naming conventions are still problems. Just like everything that you can think of that's simple, pipeline wide, everything's good. It's just those last few, like, oh, make sure there's light maps on the second UV channel or UV set, and make sure scale's right, make sure the position's right, make sure the mesh orientation's right. Just like little stuff like that can really set back the management team or the art lead.
Yeah, because that falls on the art lead to correct, doesn't it? I'm guessing.
Yeah, because it's so, and especially with me and Michael, we're not so petty to where it's like, yep, we're not accepting this package unless the naming conventions are right. We fix them, but we just let the artist know like, hey, you know, naming conventions are wrong. Make sure you just do this next time. But we always fix them. But to a certain point, it starts to become a burden. So we definitely have have to like put our foot down for some things, and of course that's everywhere. People only start to do things once they are, I guess I don't want to say threatened, but once they're aware that you're starting to get on my nerves a little bit. I don't
Mm.
like having to keep correcting naming conventions. I've told you this for like the 20th time. So it's just like a regular job.
Right, no, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I said, I think that's something. I think I don't know what you think about this. I feel like that's born from like two things. One, it's like fatigue, and it's like I just want to get this project done, and then make a few like because at the beginning of a project, I know that's what I'm like. I tend to like have my eye on the ball. I'm really on it, thinking about everything. But by the end of a project, it's dragging a bit. You rush little bits, and you make a few little mistakes. I'm the worst. Like I know Michael wants to probably slap me sometimes because I'll export assets and I've not done something stupid and like oh shit I shouldn't have done that. But it's
Peter
that, and
Freeze
also
transform.
I don't exactly. But then but I think the way it's mainly born from is a lack of empathy from the artist because I don't think they think of it as oh well it's just a naming convention, just
No,
correct
they
it.
don't.
Because
Yeah,
they
they
see it
think
as
yeah.
it's quick and easy, but like you said, if you've got like
Times it by
50
50.
props, exactly
Yeah.
50 props, but they lack the empathy to be able to sometimes go, oh well, it's only a quick naming convention. Just could you just fix it for us? Because it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, stop being a stickler. It's just a T instead of a SM.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it really does add up, and that's the last thing we want to do. We want to get the prop in the engine and put it on Perforce and get it done, and make sure the client's happy. We don't want to have to go into bring it into Maya, fix all these mesh problems and export it out, and yeah, we don't want to deal with that. But yeah, it seems like they're just being sticklers, but it's like when you have to do it 50 times each project, it adds up. Like I have like so many scavengers assets. I maybe have done like around 500, and I've had to edit all of them. But man, it is not fun. But it's for the client. It's for our homies.
yeah. So actually, just speaking of what you have to do, so remove the managerial side of it.
Yeah.
What sort of like projects? What's your like dream project? What sort of projects you like working on? What remove scavengers? 'Cause obviously, that's you probably love working on scavengers, obviously. So, what sort of stuff do you? Yeah, what would be a dream project for you to come into Dekogon? Clincher rings you for a stand up and goes, guys, got a new project. What would you hope that would be? Like if you had a choice.
I like doing level design and environment work. I know we did this one project and it's done. It just needs to the NDA just needs to drop,
Lift,
and that
yeah.
should be sometime in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once that comes out, that's really going to show a lot of people what Dekogon is capable of in terms of creating an environment from scratch. That project was really fun. Optimizing it, making it run in VR, um, tons of cool pipeline tweaks, and setting the mood like we were talking about earlier. So if I were to say, yeah, I like doing environment art.
What type of art?
That's
Like if you
like just entire levels, like setting the mood, making the assets, just a bunch of stuff
what about theme
regarding
though?
like
Like
specific level.
sci-fi,
Theme?
post-apocalyptic, modern.
Yeah, sci-fi is cool. Sci-fi is cool because I like the whole hard surface feel, and
Mm-hmm.
I love the Star Citizen pipeline.
Oh, it's
So
beast
stuff
pipeline.
like that's cool. Yeah, yeah, mostly like industrial. I really like industrial sci-fi stuff, and um, very mechanical. Like I think a good example of that is Wolfenstein. I love
Mm-hmm.
Wolfenstein art. So yeah, something like that would be super cool.
I bet you like Gears of War too. I can imagine from what you've just described to me, it sounds like Gears of War's up your street.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Gears of War, all those games really. Just a big hard surface guy.
So what do you struggle with? What's on the flip side? What's the sort of thing where you're like, it's sort of like a NASDAQ gets dropped on your desk, and where you're like, shit, man, I'm gonna have to really concentrate to get this done. What's the flip?
I'm always given stuff I don't want to work on because I always take whatever the artists don't want. So and that's usually like the hardest asset or like
So what is that?
some
What's a hard asset?
animal carcass. Uh, What's a hard asset? Usually, sometimes I get left organic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, people, the sculpt stuff's fine, but I think people freak out when it comes to the textures because in photo scan textures, you kind of have to make things look real. We can't really rely on you can't really rely on flat colors. So, I say for me, what I drill on, I think organics probably. I don't like modeling and sculpting organics, but um I do like the texture work behind organic stuff.
You like the fleshy bits.
Yeah, I've done a lot of dead bodies.
I bet that
For
reference
a lot
board's
of it.
amazing. That's got to be a good reference board.
Yeah, man, I like make a dead rabbit once. That was not fun to watch, or look up references
Did you
for.
watch? Did you watch? Oh, what's it called? There's a film which has just been re-released. The rabbit film. You seen it? Watch it down. Did you see that?
I never seen it.
Dude, it's an animation. It got remade by the BBC recently, but it's like an animation, like cartoon. But
Oh,
it
really?
is gruesome.
Oh, it's like gory. Oh, okay.
It's rabbits. It's cartoon rabbits. They're trying to move along, and it is brutal. And you'll hear stories. If
I'll have
you
to
put
use it for reference.
oh, dude, it's terrible. Like, because there's little kids watching it thinking it's gonna be cute little bunny rabbits, and it's like blurred, and they get oh god.
That sounds like I think
It's
it
weird.
Sounds familiar.
Dude,
That's funny though.
you gotta check it
Well,
out.
that's
Like,
the thing.
there's a
Yeah.
live action one they did. Like with I say live action. You know, like the Lion King CGI, the realistic
Okay.
CGI. They did that. I could not believe they chose that as the film to remake like that. It's just terrifying. So we're gonna be wrapping up soon. I've got the question I ask every guest. Bit hard for you because you're still quite young. I mean, you're 21, right?
Yeah.
So 21st episode, 21-year-old. Shit. And you're
Oh,
first
really?
art. Yeah. 21st episode.
Okay.
You're 21 and you're a first art director. I'm not gonna say young you because I think you're still young. I think it'd be an unfair question. Actually, no, go on then. 17-year-old you. What advice would you say to 17-year-old you? Like, would you say carry on doing what you're doing, exact same? Would you have some advice? What would you say?
I'd say maybe get on those mentorships a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Get in the mentorships earlier, but even then, I think I got in it pretty quick. So I tell myself, actually sitting down and working wasn't a problem at all. I know a lot of newer artists, they have a big problem with just sitting down and getting it done. That was never an issue with me. But I think if I had like a better mentorship, then, well, I say better, but I went into mentorship. I went into the 3D Fast Track mentorship. So I would have said, get into the 3D Fast Track mentorship or any other mentorship quicker or earlier, just so you can learn the pipeline correct first and then practice and perfect it. And at the time, I was super paranoid about picking things I didn't want to, that were too hard. So I would say, but eventually I took advantage of Dekogon's collab to really push the envelope on doing things I don't necessarily want to do or that I find too hard. So I'd say get into the uncomfortable zone a lot quicker. I think I stalled maybe a year and a half because I was just doing a lot of safe props, and I think that's a pretty common thing in the new artists.
What do you mean
so
safe props?
Just things that are super basic, like like a crate or a barrel or like just something like a desk or a piece of furniture, a nightstand, like just like really basic things that don't really show too much modeling. They can show like decent pipeline stuff, but for the most part, nothing that's like, wow, he knows how to hard surface, or wow, he knows how to really take advantage of Boolean workflows, or wow, he really understands PBR. So that's why when I say safe assets, that's what I primarily mean.
But don't you think? I know I said wrap up, but that brings me to an interesting point though. Don't you think with a safe asset, there's less room to hide? Now, all I mean is, if you make a super complicated like take the post-apocalyptic set. If you take a super complicated like post-apocalyptic hammer, there's a lot of room to hide with that in terms of, there's a lot of details which are kind of alien sometimes. Whereas if you make a super basic hammer, it could, it's basic, but there's no room to hide. Like, it'll either gonna look amazing or trash.
Yeah, it's one or the other. It just really depends. Like, you can take something that's like really, really basic, like going back again to Clinton's hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, the hammer, but he took something that was so universal and recognizable, and he just flipped it on its head and added nails, added tape, added all this crazy stuff. So maybe taking certain things that are, like, take my futon and convert it into like a 200-year-old post-apocalyptic futon, and that's like completely obliterated, stained to shit. Like, just make it look disgusting. And even though you're taking something that's super basic like a futon, but you're putting your own flair on it. But when I say people pick a lot of safe assets, when I picked safe assets, I didn't push that envelope. I just made the futon, and that's it. Like, I didn't like go the extra lap and really just go all out. And part of it's just like, you're just not used to being in the uncomfortable area. But now it's great because I'm so used to being uncomfortable as an artist that it's now comfortable. So like, when I'm given something like, hey, you gotta make a hanging bear, like, look obliterated and tentacles all over it and disgusting. It's like, okay, yeah, it's gonna be hard, but I can figure it out. But just getting on, because I see a lot of that when I'm given portfolio pieces. It's like, cool, he understands certain things, but I'm not sure how far we can push the guy, because he has a chair, he has a water bottle, he's got a iPhone that doesn't have any roughness variations on it. Like, it's, you're not sure how far, and that correlates with, when people are reviewing your portfolio, they're like, how far can we push the artist? If you set up your portfolio to be really basic, then
you don't know where your limit is.
The finish line's not that far. The finish line's not that far at all. But if you really push yourself in your portfolio, it shows studios like, man, the finish line is really far, and we can really start this guy on a really good path. So yeah, I'd say if I were to tell myself, I'd say get in the mentorship sooner, and then get out of your comfort zone sooner. And yeah, for sure, I would do that, and maybe get into communities quicker. At the time, I wasn't really in any communities.
That's like, every time I think about it, when I think about this question, it's the first thing I do is slap young me and say, go get into communities and go be involved. I never touched Polycount. The first art community I ever involved myself in was Dynasty. And I hear people talk about like Polycount back in the day and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, oh.
What's Polycount?
Yeah, and I felt really bad. I was
Boomer!
Oh, mate. I always think like, oh, God, that's such a wasted opportunity. But, dude, we're going to wrap up. Dude, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. Like, I know you're a busy guy, and I know you're probably going to finish now and go get back to work.
Yeah, man. It's all good. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Guys who hang around and chat, I really appreciate you guys swinging by. Always good to have live viewers. I'd say down below the Twitch panel and YouTube, there's links to my Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud. Please go like, subscribe, follow, because all the support helps us get the podcast in front of more people. And there's also a link to the Dynasty community. Swing by, join up, say hello. It's a great art community, not just because of the art, but because of the people. Like, it's full of artists from junior to leads, with directors in there. People can post their work to get critiqued. It's just a great place to learn. It's where I learn. I know there's a lot of great artists who've developed there. So get down there, say hello, show your face. It's always appreciated. But guys, we're going to sign off. Taylor, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.